Hello everyone and welcome to one of the games you guys requested from yesterday's Title Tuesday. It's from the late Title Tuesday, MagnusCarlsen with White versus Hans Niemann, and Hans won the early Title Tuesday. He had the same amount of points, the exact same amount of points as Vladimir Kramnik, and it was quite the moment. But now let's see how he does against Magnus. And he does have black here, so obviously going to be a challenge, but it is a really crazy game, obviously why you guys suggested it. And some of you have been asking me to talk a little bit about what's been happening between Vladimir Kramnik with chess.com and everything. I've not been spending so much time online lately, and well, it's very hard to pick up on what's actually happening. If some of you have like a short version of what happened between them, it'd be great. But you know, I tried reading, and it doesn't really make all that much sense. Now Kramnik is saying that they're banning him for like a month from playing in chess.com events because he publicly accused the people of cheating. Then Kramnik says, but okay, here is a video of like Hikaru, who also publicly suggests that someone is cheating, so you should also ban him for a month. And you know, it's pretty crazy, but like I said, I have no idea what they are doing. We'll definitely investigate, and if you guys are interested in that, I could maybe, you know, do a video on that, even though I don't think it's necessary. I think pretty much everyone is covering it. I think if I feel that it's necessary that I contribute to this whole saga with sort of an maybe an unbiased approach, I might do so, but until then, let's just focus on chess. So let's check it out. Magnus with White opens with yeah, okay, sorry, I thought my board was a bit cropped poorly there. Knight to f3. He goes for the Reti opening with pawn to d5 by Hans and pawn to g3. Transposing into the King's Indian attack, knight f6, we have bishop to g2 and pawn to g6. This is the Yugoslav variation of the King's Indian attack. We have b3, bishop to g7, and bishop to b2. Fianchettoing both of the bishops, we have pawn to c5 and now pawn to c4. So when you see something like this being played by a strong player, you know that you can't really rely on your opening knowledge. You have to play real chess here. We have pawn to d4, pawn to b4 immediately by Magnus, and knight to c6 by Hans. We have pawn to b5 chasing away the knight, and there are a couple of games where knight to a5 was played, but here we have knight to b8, and it is now as of move 8 that we have a completely new game. So okay, we have castles by both players, and now pawn to e3. Hans captures and f captures on e3. Interestingly, the engine really likes d captures on e3, not by a lot, but you know, it prefers it, although, you know, as a human with you know, a 3-minute blitz being played, f captures on e3 definitely makes much more sense, preparing pawn to d4. Knight b to d7, we have pawn to a4, and now knight to b6, attacking both a4 and c4. Knight to a3, defending on c4, even though queen to b3 could be a little bit stronger. Knight to a3 by Magnus, and now Hans throws in a pawn to a5. We have pawn to d4, Magnus strikes in the center, knight to g4, now putting pressure on that e3 pawn, and queen to e2. And now Hans plays bishop to h6. Here, queen to e2 is a pretty big blunder by Magnus, but I guess that happens in 3-minute blitz, as it happened quite a few times throughout this game. Now, he's offering the a4 pawn, and the reason why he's doing it is that after h3, Hans sort of has to go back, but he doesn't. He can play knight captures on e3, and that's a problem because the queen, the queen can capture the knight on e3. The queen is also defending on the bishop on b2, and this is just well, for this level, this will be lost for Magnus. Like queen captures, knight captures on b2, d captures on c5, even queen to d3, and black's position is amazing. So okay, after queen e2, Hans goes for bishop to h6, will put pressure on that e3 pawn, and now knight back to c2. The a4 pawn is no longer a target, also the knight on c2 helps out with the defense of the e3 pawn, and now Magnus's position is really awesome again. C captures on d4, Bishop captures and queen to c7. We have pawn to c5 by Magnus and knight to d5. We have rook a to d1 and bishop to e6. Knight to d2, sorry, not knight to d2, first pawn to b6, attacking the black queen, and only after queen to c8, now knight to d2. And this knight to d2 is not the most precise way to play, but this is 3-minute blitz. The knight no longer is defended by the queen by knight to d2 being played, and now Hans should play knight captures on b6. It's a free pawn because Magnus's knight on c2 is undefended. But like I said, many mistakes being made this game. Knight g back to f6 by Hans, and now knight to c4 by Magnus. We have rook to d8, knight to e5, a beautiful square for Magnus's knight, knight to g4, now offering a trade, and finally Magnus trades. Knight captures, bishop captures, and queen to c4. Queen to f2 being a bit of a safer choice, but at with little time on the clock, this also looks very nice. The queen, the rook going for f7, bishop also preparing bishop captures on d5, and now it seems like Hans can capture the rook on d1, but is it too dangerous? No, it isn't. It's actually the best move. After bishop captures on d1, should Magnus go for bishop captures on d5, you can play pawn to e6, and you're just not in time. Yes, the bishop queen pair combo is excellent, but the e6 pawn is just too nicely defended. You're gonna have to move the bishop back, and then you can simply start trading bishop captures on c2, queen captures, pawn to e5, and it's a wonderful position for Hans to have. But Hans got triggered by Magnus's trickery, goes back bishop to e6, and now we have queen to b5. And now, okay, how do you continue? Something like bishop to g4, bishop to h3 would go a long way, but Hans goes bishop to d7, and now his position is lost, but only if Magnus finds the correct idea. Feel free to pause the video and find the absolute best move for Magnus here while I give you a couple of seconds. So, for those of you who were able to do it, congratulations on always looking for exciting new ways to sacrifice your queen. And for those of you who just want to enjoy the show, it is bishop captures on d5. And you might think, wow, with 18 seconds on the clock, this is very impressive for Magnus to see. But Magnus didn't see it. He just moved the queen back, queen to b3. I will show you why it's so interesting. The idea is that after bishop captures on b5, you will play bishop captures on f7 with check. And now after king to f8, which is your only move, it seems like, okay, how do we continue? Yes, bishop to e6 opens up a discovery and you can win your queen back, but bishop captures on f1 and black is just better, not just better, winning. But there is bishop to c4, blocking the bishop while discovering a check, and now the black king has no squares. Or rather, you have to go to d8 and then bishop captures on b5 with check. Okay, rook d7 sort of saves your queen, but now bishop e5. And now, look at this, the rook will hang next. This is completely out of the game, the bishop useless. Queen not doing anything. This is the engine even cannot find the move here. Like e6 is a move. So you can play that, and then you start capturing. Rook captures on d7, threatening nasty discoveries. The king has no squares, so you're going to have to give up the queen here. Let's say captures, 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 and now whatever. Let's say rook check, you'll go here, bishop d6, and you're up a full piece, and there's not much for black to do anymore. So, okay, Magnus misses a big one here. It was a beautiful queen sacrifice, but he goes back, queen to b3, and now Hans just goes bishop to e6. We have queen to b2, and again, the position is very nice. If Hans continues with something like bishop to g4 or queen to d7, it continues being played. But now Hans plays the worst move possible. He plays pawn to f6. Well, sometimes it is a great move because, okay, you free up the f7 square for the bishop. You will then play e5. But you've done something terrible here, and I'm sure you guys realize what he has done here. Look at this. You have to be mindful of the knight on d5. He has locked out all of the squares that the knight can use to escape. And now, should the knight be attacked, the knight has no squares. f6 was the only remaining square. And so Magnus does it. Pawn to e4, and Hans loses a piece. It's that simple. Knight to b4. Okay, it's a move. Captures, queen captures on b4, and now bishop to g4. Okay, he didn't lose a piece, but he lost a very valuable pawn. Bishop to g4, and now bishop to f3. We have bishop captures, rook captures, and now he strikes with pawn to e5. With queen to c6, it's still possible to hold on a little bit, but because okay, you will meet, let's say, queen b3 check with pawn to e6, but after pawn to e5 there is now nothing he can do. We have queen to b3 check by Magnus, king to h8, and bishop to f2. And now his pawns are too strong, and one of them will break through. We have rook captures on d1 with check, queen captures, and bishop to g7. We have king to g2, pawn to f5, and now queen to d5. Now this is already, well, it's been a bullet territory for quite some time, but now they are below, both below, let's say, 25 seconds. And now, do you capture on a4? That is the question. If you capture on a4, the trick is pawn to c6, and after b captures b7. That's how you break through, and that's why those pawns are so dangerous. It doesn't matter what you play here, you're just lost here. If c captures on d5, you'll capture on c8 and only move bishop f8, and queen captures on f8 will be checkmate. So that's one way to do it. So f4 by Hans, and now Magnus goes rook to b3. Again, setting up c6 and b7 in some lines, not all of them. Pawn to g5, we have pawn to c6, and b captures on c6. And now b7 would actually be a mistake here, so Magnus just prepares it. Queen to f7. Now the queen and the rook are preparing pawn to b7. Queen to e8, Hans offers a queen trade, but Magnus can easily capture it. We have queen captures, rook captures, and pawn to b7. We have rook to b8, and now Magnus could just play bishop to a7, and Hans would probably resign, but Magnus says, nope, you've played this long, now it's time to slow burn the position. Pawn to a5. And now, okay, you see that pawn to a6, pawn to a7 are coming. There's nothing more to be done here. Hans, instead of resigning, he tried one last dirty trick. He played rook captures on b7. Now, for those of you who never played online chess or play only like rapid or maybe blitz, don't really understand what's the idea of rook captures on b6. Well, the idea is that if Magnus, or, well, maybe someone lower rated, would get too excited on winning such a game, he would already pre-move pawn to a6. And his thoughts were, well, okay, if Magnus pre-move pawn to a6, I'm going to play rook captures on b7, pawn to a6 will be played automatically, and I'm going to win his rook with rook captures on b3. Happens all the time. I do it in bullet, hyper bullet. I win many games this way. I lose many games this way. Is just what people do. But after rook captures on b7, Magnus was probably waiting for this move, every move that Hans was about to make a move, so he was ready for it. Played rook captures on b7, didn't spend even a second on this, and he was in this position on move 45 that Hans Niemann resigned the game, as there is nothing more to be done here. So yeah, he did win the early title Tuesday. Like I said, the only player with the same amount of points as Vladimir Kramnik. Two of them, well, sort of shared first place, but Hans had the better additional criteria. But against Magnus, it was a different story. So yeah, as you can see, Magnus also made many mistakes here, but on 3 minutes, many mistakes will be made, and in the end, Magnus was the better player. You know how they say, the player who makes the last mistake will win the game. So yeah, hope you enjoyed it. Be sure to suggest any other game that you would like covered that I've missed perhaps from the Olympiad, and we are, you know, gonna continue some other events that are currently happening in the world, and also I might you know, continue the rapid games on Lichess a little bit, as I've seen you guys really enjoyed that. So yeah, hope you enjoyed it. I would like to thank Little Man, an anonymous person, Grandmaster Uncle Moves Only, Ranko Djugashevich, and Nishant Ravi for your contribution to my channel. Thank you a lot, I really appreciate it. As usual, you can check 2 of my previous videos here. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you soon, continuing to check up on your wonderful suggestions and whatever else happens in the chess world. Thank you all, I will see you soon, and have an excellent rest of your day.